I stumbled across this advert a couple of months ago, which I'd like to start off with.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them. Because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
What an awesome ad. I think the point of putting that up is that one thing which we've certainly been asked quite a few times is, are we jewelry or are we food? I keep on trying to impress on people. We don't think like that. We don't think, okay, today is my food day and tomorrow is my jewelry day. And I think that part of the reason why that's come up is that probably before we bought NWJ, we were put in the same mental bucket as probably famous brands and Spur. So I think today, if I could ask you to maybe suspend those thoughts for just an hour, 45 minutes, hopefully forever, but certainly that's where our thinking is. And we've always been a little different. And part of our thinking around that is that certainly you buy Taste shares, but fundamentally, you know that you invest in the brands that underlie that. And that's a big part of our thinking behind NWJ, and certainly other categories that we may go into, is the strong brands that underlie that. So really today, what I'd like to take you through is, from my side, just three things. And then Evan will get onto the results. But the first one is I want to try and take you through why I do believe that our jewelry segment will be the defining jewelry company in South Africa, why we have the potential to do that. I then want to take you through why we're excited about being in food. 10 years on, interestingly, since Scooters Pizza, the founding entity of Taste, was started this year, in September this year. And then thirdly, hopefully try and convince you why you should care about our share. So at first, what we went through last year, and I think this is pretty, all of us have read the papers certainly, but the consumer went through a hell of a lot of pain last year. Certainly we felt some of that. It was reflected in two main trends that we saw. Number one, consumers bought down substantially. We saw in our jewelry segment that in terms of spend per transaction, consumers bought down. They also moved a lot to silver, which had that same effect, so they were getting more for the same amount of money. We saw it in food to the extent that if we put out specials or promotions of some nature, we had consumers take them up in mass. In our December promotion with Maxis, we ran out of the giveaway halfway through December. We hadn't even hit the last 15 days of December, and we had run out of it. So we certainly saw consumers trading down. I think that's fairly common for everyone here in terms of a lot of businesses have seen. But then we also saw that consumers' perceptions changed a bit. So, for example, in our jewelry segment, we found people, it's a hell of a difficult to predict spend because everyone's on sale all the time. So you actually don't have to bother going to buy jewelry without going to buy it on sale. Because they're not on sale today, they're more than likely to be on sale 2 weeks from now. So we found that the predictability of spend has changed somewhat. For the first time in a decade, our competitors went on sale before Christmas. It's never happened before in the jewelry segment. But they were on sale before. We usually go on sale around about the 28th of December. So we've certainly seen that the timing of people's spend has changed substantially. We also went through some fires, and put out some fires last year. It's interesting, I suppose, if I look back and I look what we spent management time on last year was quite different. Fortunately, they weren't as big as the California fires. But during the course of the year, we closed 11 stores in our food division, which was, interestingly, we closed 12 the previous year. And certainly some of our franchisees were still impacted by being highly geared. When they bought a franchise, they took out the cash portion was actually their bond, and the non-cash portion was apart from their bank. So still some of that. And then you've got some markets that, if you owned a store in Newton Egg, when VW shut down operations or certainly curtailed them somewhat, that store's turnover halved. So that's sort of what we spent the year going through last year. Interestingly, in our jewelry division, in terms of store closures, we closed 2 stores last year. We didn't have one franchisee close a store or one franchisee sell a store. But we had 2 closable stores that we owned that we didn't renew their leases. So despite all this, there were still some signs of hope. Almost everywhere, I'd suggest. But we saw it come in a couple of places. The first one is that we have seen some sections of the country improve. In the Eastern Cape is one, and I quoted the Utah example to you, but in the Eastern Cape, our stores are trading at 30% up year on year at the moment. And we ask the franchisees, what have they done? Of course, they say it's their efforts. Franchisees always say that. But the guys have just simply gone back to work. So we're certainly seeing parts of the economy come back in that respect. The Western Cape, it was interesting to read the job loss stats last week, because the Western Cape, as you guys know, gained jobs in the last quarter. And what we're seeing is that the Western Cape has improved substantially versus the rest of the country, a lot quicker. It was also hit a lot harder. Remember, I said that last year already we started seeing signs of that. So, but very importantly, what we are seeing is that in the second half of the year, we had a market improvement in our jewelry business. You remember that we said in the first half of the year we were like-on-like sales were down 3.6% in jewelry. In the second half of the year, they were up 1.3%. Now, if you compare that on a peer group basis, it's substantially better than our peer groups, but the fact that it's positive to some people is nothing short of miraculous in the jewelry segment. I think it just reinforces the fact of being strong in value. We also saw in our Scooters Pizza business that our like-on-like sales increased in the last quarter of last year, and that's continued in the 2 months into this year. And I think that's significant if you consider that in March last year in Scooters, we actually dropped our prices to consumers by about 5%. We've done it again this year, interestingly, in March. We've dropped it at between 5 and 15% to consumers. I'll touch on that a little later. So certainly we are seeing signs of recovery. But really, I think what our perception in terms of where we sit now, and it affects both our brands, is that the consumer we do think has changed a bit. We've read enough articles about economy of thrift, etc., and conspicuous consumption is actually not that cool. And I think that we're certainly seeing that around consumers. Everything is negotiable. Any shop you go into, you can negotiate anything from shoes to jewelry. I think we have people still negotiating on our food products, to be honest. Value is definitely king, whichever way you want to package it. But value is definitely king. And while we may not have businesses that in a boom cycle will shoot the lights out, we also won't go completely bust because we've got strong value propositions. And like I said, we're certainly seeing signs of recovery within our own brands. And importantly, we're seeing them at this stage now. So it's not that we saw them previously. So really to get to my first point then around what excites me, and that is why I think that our jewelry division can become the defining jewelry company in South Africa. And I think before I go through that, since our manufacturing facility is located in Durban, we could take you there, but we'd rather bring it to you. So I just want to take you through a short 3-minute video of how we actually manufacture jewelry at NWJ.